Hello, everyone. Thank you for making yourself available in this panel. We're going to have a great session here. So my name is João Pinto. I am board member at ITsCredit, a company that is specialized in Omnichannel throughout different continents. We have presence in 4 continents. In particular as well, we are expanding in Canada when we managed to organize this session that is going to be quite interesting, which is Omnichannel payment is a global experience. So we've got here different experience from different parts of the globe. We've got from Canada, from South Africa, from Switzerland, and as well some different experience from Poland and Portugal with Ricardo. I will start with asking each one of the members of the panel to make a brief introduction. Starting alphabetical order, we'll start with you, Adri, if that would be possible.
Good day, everyone. I'm Adri Lubbe. As mentioned, I'm from South Africa. I work for a bank called African Bank, and we are a provider of transactional as well as loan and savings products to our market. Our market is about, South Africa, the population is about 60 million, of which a large portion is what we call the unbanked market. But we do service about 40 million people in South Africa as banking, and in African Bank per se, we have about 1.5 million customers. I'm head of our Omnichannel here.
Thank you, Adri. I will follow that with you, Yana, if you could present as well yourself.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Yana Melnichuk. I'm VP Digital Banking at Coast Capital Savings, so oversee our digital banking and digital experiences here at Coast. Very excited to be joining today to talk about payments, which of course is a really big part of our day-to-day banking at Coast. We're one of the largest credit unions in Canada and have been very focused on digitization and for all of our services for our 550,000 plus members.
Thank you, Yana. I will pass to Massimo, if that will be possible.
My name is Massimo Catrambone. I'm from Hypothekarbank Lenzburg, a regional bank in Switzerland. We are a special bank in Switzerland because we are not only bank but also software developer. We have developed in the last 20 years our own open banking platform, and I'm responsible at HBL for this core banking platform in the area of Omnichannel. I do the product management and do also the partner management and work closely with eBankit.
Thank you, Massimo. And the last, but obviously not the least, Ricardo, if you could as well introduce yourself.
Thank you, João. Hello to everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. My name is Ricardo Campos. I'm currently CEO of ITsCredit. So this is a software provider of credit solutions. I have over 30 years of experience in the banking and financial sector in Portugal, in Asia, and in Poland, where I worked the previous 17 years, and in Portugal most recently, where I was CEO of a digital bank.
Thank you, Ricardo. So thank you for all this brief introduction. I've got some questions here prepared to ask each one, just as a matter of diversity here on the panel. So we've got obviously people located in 3 continents and different time zones. So brings it a bit of channel. So for me, I'm based in Porto, Portugal, where it's 5 p.m. Massimo and Adri are in the same time zone, which is 6 p.m. And Yana, the day is starting, so it should be 8 a.m. Correct, Yana?
9 a.m. Yep.
9 a.m. Okay, sorry about that. So it's good. So first topic I'd like to bring here to our conversation is we're talking about payments and digital payments, and try to understand a bit what is the digital reality on each country, what is the position of retail payments, in particular how apps are evolving in your countries, and as well, with this phase of pandemic, how you thought that the importance of these channels kind of impacts, obviously, the financial institutions that you work and the population in general. So I would start here with you, Yana, if that would be possible. Just if you can talk a bit what is Coast experience and Canada experience as well in terms of digital and apps payments.
Yeah, absolutely. We have been lucky to enjoy many of our digital payments migrating to the digital platform. So more than 90%, 93% of all day-to-day digital payments transactions are being conducted through our digital online mobile banking channels, so payments and transfers. And one of the things that we do enjoy in Canada is a quite ubiquitous peer-to payment transfer system. So those on the line will know Interac e-transfers because it is a household name, and we often say, I'll e-transfer you, and that is really our dominant peer-to-peer payment or transfer functionality. Unlike many other countries where, of course, it's a bit more of a disjointed, fragmented service. Something like in US, PayPal and Venmo, so many different players who've stepped into that space. Whereas in Canada, we're quite fortunate with having that system in place and providing that service to all Canadians. And in terms of POS payments, credit cards, of course, are still our king. We have seen cash fallen to historically low usage, and of course, pandemic pushed that momentum forward, and cash now accounts for only 5% of all of our POS transactions. Mm-hmm. So quite low number, and this is where our cards and mobile payments are on the other flip side, of course, growing. So credit cards, debit cards have been digitized, and mobile usage, so tokenized usage of those cards through your mobile devices, definitely growing. It's not the dominant space yet. Contactless payments are definitely growing in adoption as expected. POS volumes, however, have fallen over the pandemic years, about 10%. And so that shopping volume has been replaced by digital payments. So online, e-com, mobile payments, that's where we're seeing a lot of growth.
Yeah, that is very good. Very impressive with the numbers as well of the digital users on the platform from your members. That's fantastic. Adri, I know South Africa's got a different reality as you introduce yourself in terms of banking population, and you obviously face different kinds of challenge. So if you could bring in some highlight of the challenges that you face as well there with payments and digital payments.
Yeah. So in Africa, cash is still king. So cash is a very large portion, and a lot of industries like the mini taxi industry, where a lot of people used to get to work, only accept cash. So it's a hard reality, and people obviously use their bank cards to access this cash whether it's via retailers or ATMs or stuff like that. So cash prevalent, and hence your point of sale usage is also still largely prevalent in South Africa. Peer-to-peer transactions is the one that actually it's trying to kick its heels in South Africa, but the take up really isn't that good. So we do have your PayPals and your QR codes and all those Apple Pay instruments also in South Africa. Take up is sort of on a let's just play and see level kind of thing. It's not widely adopted, and but other instruments are. So your EFT is widely used, and since the pandemic, yes, we also did see a large increase in our digital transformation, but nowhere near the 90% that was mentioned. We probably went from 20% that's using the digital channels to about 45%. So we did see a doubling in volumes, but there's still quite a lot of people that is not digital savvy and hasn't been onboarded to those platforms yet.
Thank you for that explanation. At least we can see that, let's say, taking the bad event is pandemic, on digital, it kind of speed up, everyone's. Massimo, I know on the pre-run of the event you had an interesting description about Switzerland and payments. What is the Swiss reality in terms of the digital payments?
when people think about Switzerland, maybe they think about the James Bond movie, where there is a bank clerk handing over a briefcase with a lot of cash. In fact, Switzerland is a cash country, but there is a lot of digital payments also done before pandemic, and speeded up during the pandemic. We have a very strong Swiss interbank clearing platform to do bank-to-bank payments. People are used to do payments over internet banking, over mobile banking, pay the invoices like that. There are also coming up apps. We have an app developed from the banks that allows to do peer-to-peer payments instantly, and also to pay online with that app and in the shops. So it's coming up. And we have also the classic cards payments, also a lot increased in the last years. I would say we have in Switzerland really a lot of options. There is also an app to withdraw money in the shop or in the restaurant. So you can pay digitally, but you can then withdraw money over such an app. This is also an interesting use case. I think from our point of view, there will not be one solution in the future. We have several solutions. We have also e-bill, where you are getting the invoice directly in your e-banking, so you don't need to send paper to the customer or emails. You get it in a secure way, and you can also configure automatic payment of such bills.
Thank you, Massimo. You brought here some different topics and different things that we're going to explore later within the panel. So, I presume the business case of briefcases in Switzerland is going down. So let's people carrying with us with a case full of money. On a different topic, Ricardo, I've been having the pleasure of work with you as well in, let's say, in your previous part, and in particular, I've followed closely, what you involved in Poland, and the creation made by the banks associations of an entity for payments called BLIK. I wonder if you could explain a bit what was the drive and the results that you achieved with BLIK.
Sure, Jean, of course. First, just a little bit of a context, I would say. Poland was mainly a cash society, so a lot of cash, foreign exchange, cantors, they call them there, the exchange currencies. But very quickly, digital grew very fast in Poland. So the Polish are very into innovation and digital. So banking apps really spread very, very fast. You have now over almost 15 million active users of mobile apps in terms of banking. Now there were quite a number of startups, fintechs that came up with payment solutions like pay by link solutions, these exchange rate solutions, and then Apple and Google also came up, started pushing in their applications. Cards also came up with some virtual wallets, etc. So that was a moment when I participated with 5 of the largest banks, so the 6 largest banks in Poland, and I participated as one of the founders of BLIK. And it was a very interesting project because we thought about how can banks really get into this field and not be left out. And so we thought about creating a mobile payment scheme, right? Very simple, right? With a 6-digit code. So outside of cards. So this was also part of wanting to have a separate mobile payment scheme that was separated from card rails, right? At that time, most people in the market were saying, but why are you doing that? It makes no sense. It takes a huge time to launch a payment scheme. It's very extensive, etc. But we went ahead. So we started up as a founding member and then accompanied it. We set up a team, this group, this joint venture. And the main purpose was to move transactions onto the mobile payment transaction. And so the key point of one of our decisions was to have BLIK in the mobile banking applications of all banks. Now, this seems easy. But in the beginning, banks took a kind of a different path here. And I'm happy to say that the path that we took was the most successful, just by chance. But anyway, but everybody then followed suit. Why? Because we decided not to have any onboarding at all. So all of our customers that were using our mobile application were automatically enrolled in Bleak, and they had immediately the 6-digit code, which they could use. So what type of services we had? So of course you could withdraw money on an ATM without a card, just with the 6-digit code. You could start doing P2P payments with Bleak codes, and this extended to all the banking customers of all the other banks. Then additionally, we started adding other banks outside of this founding team. We added also the e-commerce payments, and this is where it really took off completely. So now today, so in the beginning, just to give you an extent, in the beginning about, the big majority were ATM transactions, people withdrawing money on the ATMs. Now, almost 75% of transactions are e-commerce transactions. So Bleak now accounts for more transactions on e-commerce than cards together, Visa and MasterCard. It has now about 150 million transactions in the last quarter. So in this first quarter of 2020, we did 155 million transactions. 75% are e-commerce. Then you have these P2P payments. In the e-commerce, they also launched at that time a one-click payment, which is very innovative. So you can choose an e-commerce that you pay for normally, and you can choose any one-click. And this is totally independent from the commerce itself, from the company itself, right? And the key of the success here has been really the simplicity of it, right? It's just the 6-digit code, which is so much easier to pay for on the internet than inputting your card number, your CVV2, etc., right? So, and it's secure. It's using the bank applications, right? And at the same time, you have a one-time code, so that is running there. So right now, the expansion is huge. It's expanding outside. So we did then, which is irony, we did a partnership with MasterCard, in which now with MasterCard, we can go abroad and extend with the card rails to have it expanded abroad. There was a partnership also with British companies, so that in most of the e-commerce in the UK, now we can use Bleak codes as well. And now there's an expansion to the Middle East, which is also expanding there. So it's growing.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic experience. I think it's quite great to hear and share these different paths that I presume, a group of banks took and the success is bringing. And I think, overall, I think the importance as well is the simplicity and the use case it brought to everyone to make it a success. So thank you very much for that explanation, Ricardo. So here, let's say on the second topic here, obviously we already mentioned there are different payments providers. There's different players coming in the market. There's the dominant one that normally exists in a specific code, and then the challenging ones that come with different forces, either simplicity, either cost, either a mixture of both, either some market dominance in some shops or some aspects. So what I like to see is, obviously, from your experience within your roles, how do you see these payments provider, the enters of fintechs, and the evolution within your country and from your bank overall? Massimo, you seem, on the fast answer, to have a lot of things already built with HBL. So if you could, tackle this question first, it will be great.
Yeah, sure. We have in Switzerland a market that is not that much regulated like in the rest of Europe. And we see a lot of players acting in our market, especially fintechs that are starting with fintech banking license and so on. So in our eyes, it's the key success factor is not working closely only with one player, but to keep several options open and to provide to our customers more than one option, as much options as possible, and to have the flexibility to do that. For that, we have our own open banking platform, Finstar. And with that, we provide open APIs, so we can, over this integration, have a fast integration, time to market that allows us to integrate in weeks or months with new players in the market if we decide that. We have also in our market neobanks, like maybe some people know N24 or Revolut, similar actors we have here in Switzerland, neobanks that use our APIs to do the onboarding, open an account, do the all transactions. And this gives also the opportunity to them to integrate with additional players. So we don't have only the integration with the neobank, but then the neobank has an integration with players like TransferWise and so on. So it's an ecosystem. We realize that we have to be part of the ecosystem and not the only solution. And this gives us an advantage compared to other classic banks.
It's a fantastic path. Obviously the question will be, try to follow up then these numbers, overall, on the percentage of payments, what's, then what is people using, but we'll leave that question to another time. Adri, I'll address you now, a similar question. So in terms of different players in South Africa, what is the scenario there? Are they coming new players to the market? And in particular, then how is African Bank looking at these players, and how they how is the bank basically engaging and integrated with these players in case, it's part of your business strategy?
Yeah. So obviously, because we're using the eBank platform, we've got the front end separated from the back end, and we're working through this API layer. And via this, we focus basically on two areas where we do get the fintechs involved quite a lot. So the first one is to do with security, and getting different security layers on it. So whether it's two-factor authentication, we've got companies in South Africa that sort of specialize in different ways of doing fintech and two-factor authentication. So we're basically moving away from things like one-time pins and so forth, and getting smarter ways to do that. And then the second one is also we are at least fortunate to have a very good home affairs that's got biometric data and even facial recognition going. So we're also starting to use a lot of your bio kind of authentication, which is not to your device, so it's not a selfie for myself and it's verified against my device. It actually goes up to our home affairs and verify you there. So a lot of biometric verification. So that on the security side is the two things that we play with. And then on the payment side, there is definitely a lot of people and companies emerging in the integrated space. So we do a lot of buy payments, if I can call it like in South Africa. So you'll typically buy tokens for electricity or data, or even bus tickets or those kind of things, which you actually buy directly from the supplier, and you integrate with a retailer that they can get the token at the retailer or directly, or even send the cash to the retailer. So there's a lot of fintech players that does these integration kind of things. So they will integrate from their side with all the municipalities and so forth, and you'll just link directly into that. So that's sort of also a huge space, is that these companies is forming and trying to get as many services. So whether it's bus tickets or lotto or electricity, they're trying to add as many possible entities onto these platforms, and then you just do the single integration, and obviously there's some commissions involved. So that's the two biggest fintech play areas for us at the moment.
Yeah, so thank you, Adri, for this feedback. I think, it's fantastic how the different regions are, and, how you can address this type of issues by making it available for people to purchase and make bill payments and using the apps. Ricardo, different question as well for you. I know that you were launching as well an integration of TransferWise in Activo Bank when you were the CEO there. I wonder if you could talk a bit about, what was the drive to launch that, and some of the results you achieved with this integration from TransferWise in the apps.
Sure. I think this is a good example of how banks can cooperate with fintechs and vice versa. Right. In this case, payments banks, as we all know, are still very much founded on these correspondent accounts process, which is very inefficient, very expensive, makes that transfers take a long time still, very expensive transfers. And I mean, having already the experience with TransferWise, using it to pay to my daughter, which was studying in the UK, so I was not even using my banking services to pay for her fees. I said, "No, look, I have to partnership with them." So I contacted them. I contacted the CEO of TransferWise, Cristo, started discussing with him the possibility. Taking into account again the experience I had in the past, even with Bleak, etc., where I see the strong advantage of putting it into the banking app, where you really have already millions of customers or thousands of customers there. It gives a kickstart, a really great kickstart. And so Christopher agreed with that let's bring TransferWise process into the banking app. Let's change a little bit the experience and leverage on the great experience that it had. So what we did was we integrated the services. So this means that anybody that is already using TransferWise, when they logged into our app, they were able to see the possibility to pay with TransferWise, and then they could upload immediately and automatically all their history, so all their past. I mean, if they're already users of TransferWise in the past, they could upload all that history of their beneficiaries, their accounts, and all of that, so they wouldn't lose any of that, and start immediately doing the payments there. And the advantage that customers had is that they don't need to transfer money to their card or to upload cash onto their cards, etc., because it's anchored onto the banking account. This is something that I'm fighting a lot to just a sideline on these instant transfers that is now being discussed in Europe-wise. I sincerely think they should be anchored on the account. It makes it so much easier. But on this case in particular, so we integrated it. We had a lot of customers of ours that were from Brazil and from other countries, and they started immediately using the app there. So they shifted immediately from their normal TransferWise payments they were doing before, and they moved it into the banking app, and they started doing it there. So cost-wise was exactly the same, speed exactly the same experience, but with the additional factor that it was drawn on their current account. So I think here, and it was, I mean, it was great to see it because we started it kind of in a particular month. I don't know when it was. This was mid-COVID, but like 6 months later, I get a call from Cristo, and he calls me up and says, "Ricardo, congratulations! I'm seeing Activabank the first time on our map." So they have a map in which they see the different players there, the different geographies, and normally you have to have a certain size of transactions to show up there. And so for the first time, we started growing to a point. So it was really a very fast uptake there. They also learned with the process that they did with us. So you have a you have a fintech which improves their process in terms of security-wise. I mean, of course, they were very secure, but we just pushed it a little notch higher in terms of a couple of things, the accounting process, etc. So, and on our side, we improved also in terms of the customer experience and all that stuff. So this is a good example, I think, of how a fintech and a bank can get together, and we can create something better than on our own, in fact.
So,
Jean, you have to mute. Yeah.
Thank you, Ricardo. Thank you. I'm already on mute. So, Yana, I wonder as well, what's the reality that you see in terms of Canada, in terms of cost capital, in terms of how different payments are coming into the market, and what is cost view in terms of how you're linking to these payments provider, to these different entities, to open banking and fintech. So I wonder, what is your view on this move within the market?
Yeah, well, within Canada, as I mentioned earlier, we do have a well-established payments infrastructure, and that infrastructure has been around for a long time and is well used by the financial players. However, it's currently going through a major modernization effort. Of course, what this conference is all about. And so there, through Payments Canada and various organizations to ultimately take advantage of the new innovations, take advantage of an API infrastructures, being able to not just provide a payment in its current state, but be able to streamline it with a lot more transparency and ability to ultimately integrate various payments providers, similar to what Ricardo was talking about. That's how we look at it as well. So, the pain points that I currently see for Canadian consumers, for Coast members as well, is around international remittances and payments. So whether you're a retail member, small business or commercial, so many different use cases when you have a need to, I'll use the word wire money back in the day, right? But there's so many alternatives now that people, of course, are using through various fintechs. Some FIs have gone ahead and integrated some services similar to what Ricardo was saying, provider, something like a Wise or Western Union, but there's still quite a lot of people who are going to physical locations to send money to their families, or are on their own to have to figure out, a use case that I'll mention is there, a tutor who's potentially, providing those educational services to your kids from a different country. How do you do a payment to someone over there on a regular basis without having to absorb enormous fees and having to wait for that $20 payment to come through? So people are definitely out there looking for alternative services to be able to do this quickly and cost effectively. And I think that's where Canada has a lot of room for growth. And this is where I see innovation coming to Canada. And, the experiences that we'll be delivering, I think it's going to be all the way across, from standalone apps to integrating into digital banking experience to be able to provide a much more seamless behind the scenes international transfer. That's ultimately the vision that we all want to get to.
Thank you. I see, there's a common pattern, between all these different regions. I presume now would be probably the adoptance of killer apps, of killer applications that will make it to go faster. And obviously, what we see always on digital area is two topics. One, obviously, to do with security and how secure make the transactions, and then obviously from the user, all the simplicity and the cost that you have to attach to these different types of solutions that you're going to address and to make them work. I was looking here at my notes, and I've realized we've got like 10 minutes left on the panel. So probably, I will skip some of the questions, I have prepared and go more into a topic about, innovation or, the next steps that your institutions are looking to the future. So the way I see it is, we are an area that in terms of digital, all the financial institutions are placing their customers on the centrics, or becoming customer centric, how you can provide services for your client in a simple way, where omnichannel, I presume it's a reality, the capability to use different channels to interact with your bank, make your transactions, start one transaction in one channel, continue on the other one. So all this part is becoming more and more. We see mobile becoming the most dominant channel of usage, in particular, when we talk about payments, checking balance, transfers. And we came to these other topics now about, how we see, things as predictive banking. So, we're not going just now to, let's say, the needs of a customer. So I want to make a transfer, I want to make a payment, and then I do it. So it's how can the financial institutions give me some insight or some help of what will come in the future, or what will come in my future in terms of financial transactions. And the other area I would like to bring here as well is obviously what we are kind of talking about, having embedded banking. So once I can use my app and pay for public transports, or if I can use my banking app and pay for parking, everything, in the same container. So these were two areas in terms of innovation that I've highlighted, and I really would like to see what is your views in terms of this future. So I don't know where to start. So Yana, I kind of left you out on the last call. I was skipping the order, so I'll skip your order now and give you as well the possibility of being first as well, and tell us what is your and Coast Capital views, and as well kind of in terms of this innovation path.
Yeah, I think I think there's going to be lots of really cool innovations coming as we continue to modernize the underlying platforms, and it's going to open up all of these really cool use cases. I see, Canadians sometimes maybe a little slow to pick up on some of the innovations, but what we have seen is when those innovations are being sort of integrated into the established financial institutions' experiences, that's when the adoption happens, that major curve adoption comes from. So trust and security definitely has a really big role to play in that. Various, security aspects of it through biometrics, two-factor, multi-factor authentication. And then ultimately having that peace of mind is very important to the Canadian consumer. So I think wherever those innovations come from, and what the very important part of that is going to be how we present it, how we position it to the Canadian users, and getting their buy-in to grow the adoption.
Thank you. I think that was a very good answer. Adri, what is your view as well in terms of innovation, in terms of evolution, in terms of financial and payment systems?
So I think what we're seeing is basically two sort of forces that's forming. So one is definitely in the realm of what we call personal financial management. So that's typically your predictive kind of things. I think currently what we've got is not predictive per se, but you will have sort of applications that are saying, for example, on the 25th every month, I see you've got 1 to 3 debit orders going off, and I know it's going to cost you so much, but your bank account balance is not going to be enough, and sort of you'll get preemptive messages to fund your account. So that definitely, there's a lot of work to scale that up into much more real predictive big data kind of thing, to see if there's any payment patterns forming on your account, and then basically how that's going to affect your budget, to set up savings goals or to set up goals, and then to match your spending behavior to those goals, and keep on tracking your progress. With that comes a lot of rewards and gamification kind of things. So you'll typically, and people are just starting to play with it, but it will probably get much bigger to say, you set your goal, and as you are doing the correct actions to get to your goal, in a gamification way, you'll get rewards along your journey to get there. And typical rewards that we're playing with is things like grocery vouchers or airtime vouchers or stuff like Uber Eats is actually one that is really doing great as incentivization. So definitely a lot of personal financial management, gamification, everything around that. And then, as was mentioned, definitely international money transfers, but obviously still with us, cash is king. So there's a lot of problems specifically in Africa to send money to your family in Malawi, but you can't do TransferWise because it's not a cash solution. So it's integration into somebody that can actually give them the cash and not just have it in a digital bank account where they can access. So it's really from electronic transaction into somebody either accessing the ATM network or integrating into a retailer network that can actually give the person on the other end some money. So there's a lot of innovation and different integration partners we're seeing in that space.
Yeah, thank you. It's I would comment on this and say we see different parts of the world coming with cashless or point of sales where you can go, whether it's in Europe, such as Massimo was saying, Switzerland, you can go and withdraw money from, a store nearby, or whether, in South African people are on banks. So we see the same solution coming into place in different aspects of society's life. Massimo, do you want to as well address this question in terms of innovation?
Yes, what I can say is, in general, paying is a pain for the people, because you have less money afterwards. So it should be fast. You should not realize that you are paying. This is what the merchants want, and on the other side, the bank has to provide to the customer a way to manage the money in the best way possible. So helping the customer to save money, to invest money in products. So that's, I think there are two key factors to take in consideration. The bank has to provide to the customer a 360-degree view of his financial situation, independently of how he pays. And then what we also see is that more and more B2B2C platforms come. So the goal is not to pay. The goal is to get something, some service, and I get it, and the payment is handled behind. You don't realize it really, and it has to be secure. So that's why we think you need more and more APIs. You need integration with other platforms. We live in a world of software, APIs, platforms. That's the future. If you have a look at platforms like Amazon and so on, behind a lot of things are happening, and banks cannot just think we can do business like we did in the last 50 years.
Yeah, it's the big competition on this area, and we can see more and more players kind of coming into the digital and the banking areas. Ricardo, as well, there's a big topic we can start see it all the time, which is, let's say, buy now, pay later. And I know you're as well involved in something as this. I don't know if you want to comment this or any part of it, innovations that you see as well on these areas of payments.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, so just to draw a bit now on my recent experience, on my current experience with ITsCredit. So this is the credit software house. So I think in terms of, before getting into the technologies, I think this new layer that has come up in the past years of, on one side, responsibility, and the other side, sustainability, is also drawing on the technologies that are being utilized. So we saw how buy now, pay later has grown fast, right? But there also happens a lot of problems, right, with how people are taking loans, how it's been offered. So here, the technology has a big place, but under the rules and under the guidance of sustainability. So not only to utilize all the predictive learning, all the artificial intelligence sensor to understand better and better who are the customers and their ability to take loans and do it in a responsible way. So this is something that we are working on and adding on in the buy now, pay later area, but also adding sustainability to all the loans we do, right? So having the possibility that banks, companies that are offering loans are able to understand to which companies they're offering loans, because we all know that the companies that are going to be more profitable in the future, and vice versa, the ones that will not be, are in fact the ones that are dealing with sustainable matters. So the ones more sustainable are going to be the future. So there is a factor of risk if you don't understand the company in terms of its sustainability, individuals as well. So you have to have the ability to be able to price it differently, the risk, right? So this is another area that we are also involved in and moving forward in terms of helping banks and customers to be able to understand and estimate the sustainability of their corporate customers. So all the technology you've already mentioned, but open banking, for example, open banking with the open APIs. I think this is a classic case of what Bill Gates said, that we overestimate in the first 3 years, and then we underestimate in the next years. So I think there's been a huge hype on it. It was launched, hasn't produced what everybody was expecting, but don't underestimate it, because the potential is there and it's really growing fast. So this also has a huge potential for all the things that we are doing in order to tap into knowledge, into information with the consent of users. And here, just to highlight a key point on all this development that companies have to do, you have to look at the process, you have to look at the customer experience. So only through the customer experience, only by allowing customers to understand why you're asking me for the data, why you're asking me to provide you this information, can I be willing to give you this information so that you can provide me the service that you promise, right? So this is also GDPR, which has been launched, and also here hasn't had the impact that many review it would have. It will have. So it's moving. It's already in California, moving to other countries. This is an area where the companies have to innovate in the customer experience to be able to convince customers to share their data with the company, so that then you can provide them the service that they will require. So this is a huge area that we're working on, and an innovation in these areas, but always focusing on the responsibility and the sustainability, which I think are going to be the strong pillars that are going to guide us in the next future.
Yeah, thank you, Ricardo. This is the moment, so thank you all. This was, the panel was 45 minutes. We kind of went just a few minutes ahead. So thank you all. First of all, thank you all for these brilliant things. So this is now, if we were all physical present the same, where we pick up the microphone and ask the audience if anyone has any questions. So I know the platform as well allows for any of the participants to ask any questions. So if anyone's watching this wants to ask any question, feel free to, I presume it's type there on the room, and just ask us any questions you like to do. Meanwhile, I'll just take 2 notes. I've got a note here from the marketing team from eBankit, where they highlighted me that today is Children's Day, so International Children's Day everywhere in the world. eBankit has created a simple coloring book that I think is quite helpful to entertain and to gain some time. I think it's available on a PDF version on the eBankit booth. So if you go to the session here at the Canada Payment Summit, there's exhibit hall. If you follow eBankit, then they should have a link to coloring book, and it is an interesting and simple idea of remembering this special day and remembering our children. Mine in this case, I'm sure they won't like a coloring book, but it's part of the past. So continue with this lively channel, this lively chat, and some of the questions I would like to ask. I've got many different ones here, so I'll start posing this question and see who wants to answer. So with obviously digital banking, omnichannel, internet banking, started probably in the year 2000 or before, apps becoming in play, let's say in the last decade, even prior to that. And we see that in terms of payments. So what is the view that you see in terms of adoption from the retail side, in terms of users of the different channels? Which one is becoming dominant, and some of the challenge that you find on using these channels? I don't know if anyone wants to volunteer to answer this question. Otherwise, I might force a person to answer, but not me.
Okay, I'll go.
Thank you, Adri.
So what we're saying, obviously in the UX space, and if you listen to UX people, then apps is obviously the way of the future. But behavioral-wise, we do actually see quite interesting patterns. Data in South Africa is not per se cheap. So what you will see is in the mornings and the evenings, app usage is way dominant, but in working hours, people use their company's internet. So your web payment still is, in those hours, is the main usage of it. So those 2 platforms do dominate, just on different times. So we continue to invest heavily in both of them, and it probably will be that way in South Africa till we really do get real cheap data here. That people will go for the least expensive option, which is sometimes your company's resources.
Yeah, that's.
I can confirm the same from my side. especially now in the pandemic, where a lot of people are working from home. They start reusing internet banking platform, and before they were using only the mobile banking. So it's not either one or the other, it's often both.
Yeah, and we've observed similar behaviors as well. Our mobile traffic is definitely dominant at this point in time, about 2-to-1. But what we have seen is there are certain transactions that tend to dominate in one channel or another. So what's interesting is those e-transfers, our peer-to-peer sort of transfer network, those are virtually all mobile, not all, but very, very sort of dominantly on the mobile channel through the apps. But when it comes to bill payments, it's actually still in desktop. So, the way we sort of look at it is sometimes or most of the time, you're probably paying multiple bill payments at once. So it takes a little bit of that planning. You're sitting down, you're sort of planning it out, and then desktop channel, and perhaps it's being done during those work hours, to Adri Massimo's points, but that's where that channel sort of dominates. So it really is, that behavior and the context in which that user is or where they are. I think that's where it tends to dominate. But when it comes to payments, we're definitely going to see, I think, a big growth in the mobile channel, as those payments tend to happen often in the moment.
Yeah, I'd like to confirm that both in Poland and in Portugal, the markets that I was following. I mean, the growth has been huge. Like I mentioned with Bleak payments, they grew 100% quarter on quarter, right? So it's a huge growth. Just like to highlight one point, which I think is still a bottleneck and still a moment for development and improvement there. If we want to develop further the mobile banking, which is the key platform with payments, the link to the final payment moment, right? When the customer is paying, that moment, there's still a link. There's still decoupled, right? So banks don't have access to that particular moment, that decision moment, right? Credit decisions are being taken there. Fintechs, it's a fintech ground, like with Klarna and others there, etc. So from that perspective, I think that banks should cooperate more with fintechs in order to get the power of the mobile banking with all this insight that fintechs have on that moment that the customer is paying for taking the decision, because that part is still missing, so that you can get that into the artificial intelligence process, so that you can get a more predictive, more customized decision, etc. So that is the area where I think we still need to grow in order to develop the omnichannel, the mobile banking system with the fintechs.
Okay. So thank you, Ricardo.
You're welcome.
I think we basically run out of time. For me it was a great session. So let me thank personally all of you first to be available for this panel. As well, more important, that I think the contest was very interesting and it was quite fun for me to be able to moderate this. I think we just have this request here from Esther to put our smiley faces now to the panel. I thank all the people that listen to this conversation. If you have any questions or anything, feel free to ask them here or to contact anyone at the Bankit, and we more than happy to pass any questions as well to the people on the panel. So thank you all and have a good day.